The one-eyed old man feared discovering the cargo marked with the devil's sign. In fear, he let go of the rope. The cask fell, nearly hitting a boy. Quickly, the old man acted, averting the accident. The captain, seeing the boy's shock, ordered the sailor held back. The old man, eye-watering, said he knew the sign on the cask was ominous and wouldn't take the fire for 10 old ladies. God save you. Save the ship. Save the fire.
We saved the crew.
The old man's words spread unease, but the men, paid well to transport casks to London Abbey by sunset, overcame their fears, loading the ship with goats for the voyage. Unknown to them, a collision had loosened a cask seal, leading to disaster. The ship sailed, while the consignor watched from the island, praying silently. The sunset reflected on the sea, all seemed calm, but at night, unimaginable events occurred. The demon-sealed crates in the hold moved, and ropes began to fall out on their own. The rats sensed terror and fled. Other animals were anxious, trying to escape. The crew on deck inspected the area with binoculars when a white face appeared, nearly scaring them. On closer look, nothing seemed different. He quickly told Blackie, who said he stayed on deck and saw no one. Thinking he imagined it, he turned away. Meanwhile, under the deck, a dog saw a figure in the dark and was bitten to death by a creature. Later, the ship's cook went to the hold to see the succubus goat, tripped, and saw the dog's body. Shocked, the able-bodied man opened the hold to investigate and found the feeder, the dog, and its body. The beasts of burden were all killed, even the goat, drained of blood by a wild beast, spreading an ominous air in the cabin. The one-eyed old man's warning echoed in their minds. To calm his nerves, the captain asked Black to check the dragon-designed casks for issues. At the bilge, they found a cask shocked by the voyage bumps. A crate overturned, revealing foul-smelling black soil. Curious, the old man examined the crates, then a noise above caught his attention. He saw a woman lying there, covering her eyes, and was so shocked he wet himself. But looking closer, he found her attractive. As the ship's doctor, he had to check her for any issues. As the ship's attendant, the woman wore a blood band. Old Black realized she was infected and needed a blood transfusion to survive. But sailors believed a woman's presence was a bad omen, preferring a goat with a pretty face instead. With no help, Old Black transfused her blood himself. He resisted converting her. The woman fed the chicken, deer, and deer monster. Though Old Black's bodhisattva saved the others, the monster lived. Soon enough, the man on watch noticed a sudden movement on the deck. He thought it was one of his mates again, a deliberate attempt to play a trick on him. Then he stepped forward to find a gaping hole knocked in the warehouse ventilation panel from the inside, the sound of gulping and swallowing coming faintly from the darkness. The man managed to hold back his inner fear, and walked slowly over to the source of the noise. Not realizing that he would see a lean voice around a corner, he drew his dagger and tried to find out why the monster was on board, but suddenly attacked. He saw a thin voice, he drew out his dagger and just wanted to ask why he was on board the ship, but the monster suddenly attacked and slit the man's neck directly. The sweet blood was instantly thrown on the deck. The man fell to the ground quickly. He couldn't hold on any longer. The monster saw the situation and immediately fell to the ground and licked on the fresh blood to replenish its strength, and then grabbed hold of the man who was struggling, and started to eat crazily. When Blackie hears the commotion and gets to the deck, the monster is gone, and the sailor is missing too. The hole in the deck and the nosehead are so alarming that Blackie sounds the alarm and warns the men. By morning, they find no trace of the sailor and think he fell into the sea after getting drunk. Then, the woman saved by the old black man wakes up, terrified, saying Dracula is hiding on the boat and they must escape, but there's no car in the vast sea. Speaking of cars, what do people do with their old ones when buying new ones? But the motel weighed on the captain's life and family. He wouldn't let go of his hard work due to the woman's words. The captain might have said a few words, starting with a good book, so she showed the bite marks to the old man, saying the monster came out at night, biting the car. To rid the monster, the village mayor offered the woman to Dracula, making a deal so the monster could sail and gain the British people. If they didn't abandon traditions to survive, they feared being monster food. As night fell, Dracula boarded again, and sailors were so unaware they didn't see Dracula's face, a monster symbol. Superior to the men who had been intimidated by the monster's smile, they were no longer alive. Even if he climbed the pole without a second thought, how could a monster let go of his prey? The ship was lost. The helmsman swayed in the storm as the crowd endured the bumps and fire. The next second, all the men suddenly quieted down and tried their best to control the direction of the armor plate, and only by luck were they able to save their lives. However, just as they were about to pursue the responsibility of the watchman, they found that the two men had already disappeared and were nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, a drop of blood descended from the sky and landed on the shoulder of the captain's son, and they then discovered with horror a man who was breathing for breath on the roof of the ship. No one knew what happened last night, but from the marks on the sailor's body, we could see that there might be something dirty on board. Therefore, before nightfall, we started to search the whole ship, but we did not find anything until the sun went down at sea level. The bitten boy was reduced to a mere puppet of Dracula. When the boy heard the noise, he tried to ask who was responsible, but they grabbed him by the shoulders and dragged him to Dracula. Luckily, at the last moment, the boy cut off his hair and used his size to escape from the men's clutches. After returning to the captain's cabin, he immediately locked the doors and windows, and banged furiously on the planks of the cabin. Trying to send out a distress signal, the crew on the deck rushed down to help, and dared to contain the mutated crew at the critical moment, but the boy inside could not breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the monster hiding in the corner from the corner of his eye. But when he stood up, the place was empty outside the door. The crew tried to open the door, but they could not do so. The next moment, everyone was suddenly quiet. Through a crack in the door, they saw a horrific monster appear in the room, and then in a bizarre gesture, it came to the boy's head and attacked, biting and wounding him. By the time they opened the door, it was too late. The boy was lying in a pool of blood, covering his eyes as he breathed his last, and the monster had vanished into thin air, with 5 days to go. In order to prevent the crew from picking up the wounded man, they had tied him to the deck, not realizing that as the morning sun rose, the crew member who had touched the ultraviolet rays suddenly howled in pain and was quickly engulfed in flames and reduced to a pile of dust, and that the boy who had been bitten by the fire had been killed by the fire. It could turn into a similar issue because of the other guy's age. I can't swap blood like Anna to survive, so maybe I need to take down Dracula. In the process, considering that the monster had crawled all over the place, they couldn't bear to move in the daytime, and it was only at nightfall that they began a blanket search of the crate with the dragon motifs, and the cook, almost exasperated by the group, simply knocked out his companions and made preparations to sail away in a small boat by himself. But it wasn't long before a thick fog rose up from the sea, making it impossible to tell where they were going, and there was even a horrific cracking sound around the area. But then, along with the stealing of the words, a hammer built up in the cook's mind, and he realized that the monster had been lifted up by 2 wings, and that it was fast as lightning, and that the man had been shot by the German before he could fire a shot. When the crew realized that the lifeboat was not going to fly, the bloodstained boat picked itself up strangely, and it was clear that Dracula, in his quiet control, was killing only 1 man a day, until he succeeded in arriving at the port, and saw that the boy had been transformed by the monsters and was buried in the sea. He was afraid and angry that the people of his country would have to live in dire straits, and with only 1 day's sail to their destination, the men decided to lay an ambush to trap Dracula aboard the ship, and then bury the motel in the morning at sea with the monster, while they escaped in a lifeboat. Hearing that there was still a chance of survival, the men immediately raised their spirits, and by daytime, sealed up the cargo hold, ensuring that Dracula would be able to get to the deck only by the route they had left open. Anna was responsible for attracting the attention of the monster, while the other 2 set up a pout high above the ship to ensure that Dracula would show his face for a second. However, at night, a thick fog suddenly rose from the sea and soon engulfed the entire model ship, blocking the view and making it impossible for the sailors who had been lying in ambush to determine the exact position of the monster, except for the sound of wings flapping overhead. And then it became clear that it had been lifted up onto its wings and was moving with the rapidity of lightning, and that Dracula had been killed by a bolt from the side of the ship. Dragged down by Dracula and killed on the spot, the remaining sailors were scared out of their wits and hurriedly climbed down the rope, only to run headlong into the fast-flying Dracula. Although by luck, he survived, but by good luck, the man could feel his dog's leg had been broken, and as he watched, the monster's next wave of attack was approaching. The man was suffering from influenza, and told Black to prepare the escape boat, while he himself tried to lure the monster to the hold, and immediately tried to lock the steel door, and chiseled the hole out of the boat. Then, with a desperate effort, he locked the steel door and cut a hole in the hatch, ready to die with Dracula, but the monster had dug a hole in the side of the food compartment, and as the man swung his axe, he struck without mercy, ending his life. After the harvest, Dracula found the captain fixing the ship's helm, and I can prove to him that you're a demon. I can prove to you that you're a demon, but unfortunately, monsters have no regard for magical harm, and in a few moments, the monster had taken the captain's life, and when the old man reached the deck, it was too late for him, and he was afraid, and furious, and he was in the middle of his attack, but he was not able to escape. Amidst the raging storm, he shouted curses at Dracula, making a solemn vow to destroy him completely. Dracula, deeply enraged by the harsh insults, descended from the sky and landed nearby, launching a fierce attack on Black, who was merely a man of flesh. the shelled enemy quickly fell to the ground, waiting to be harvested. At that moment of crisis, Anna attacked with a gun, and that was all it took to wear down the monster's bloodline. Dracula's actions were lightning fast, knocking out Anna's gaping cavity in a single glance, and then he spread his wings and wrapped the woman up in his arms, dragging her down with a fury. With his hand, he strangled Black and made a gash in her neck, and the drops of rain that continued to fall, mingled with the blood, made Dracula hungry for dinner, and he opened his bloody mouth. But when Anna took advantage of her inattention to cut the twine of the boom, and rendered the whole boat impotent, Dracula let go of Black and, just as he was about to come to Anna's assistance, the two of them leaped into the sea, and the boom, which was the thickness of a bucket of water, snapped off and smashed directly into the boat, which was too slow to react. Dracula and Anna tried to escape with the help of a small boat, but at that moment, the man at the top of the lighthouse noticed that the motel was about to break the waves and come ashore, which meant that Dracula finally arrived in London in good time, and the sun was about to rise the next morning, when the two of them, lying on their stomachs on the floating poles, survived. However, just as he found the shore, he saw Anna's pupils whiten, and it was clear that she would soon be transformed into a blood-sucking ghost. So after saying goodbye to Black, Anna took the initiative and climbed up the planks to embrace the sun's sharpness, and very quickly the news of the silence of the motel spread across the streets of London as the news reported that there had been no survivors in the South China Sea, but Black knew in his heart of hearts that the monster was hiding in a corner of England,